This report used artificial intelligence, so it's invalid. That was the sentence that cracked the floor under me. No warning, no quiet conversation, no chance to defend myself, just those words. Sharp and final, landing in the middle of a room full of people who suddenly forgot how to breathe. My name is Hazel Mercer, project analyst for a mid-tier logistics tech firm in Portland, Oregon. At least, that was my job until the morning my manager decided to make an example out of me. Her name was Marla Keating, and she spoke each word like she wanted them to bruise. "Explain why you thought this was acceptable," she said, turning toward me as if she'd been waiting months for this scene. I heard myself answer. I used artificial intelligence to help with the forecasting model, but I verified every number manually. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Marla let out a breathy laugh, the kind that pretends to be patient. "That is not what our new compliance guidelines say. You know that." Around us, chairs creaked. No one looked at me. I recognized the silence. It was the kind people use when they hope they won't be next. "This entire report," she continued, tapping the folder on the screen, "is invalid. It is contaminated work." She dragged her finger toward the delete command like she'd been rehearsing it. "Marla, wait," I said. "Please at least review." "There's nothing to review." Her tone sharpened. "If you don't like it, Hazel, then go work for another company." Someone inhaled too loudly behind me. Someone else muttered my name like they wished they could take it back. And then Marla pressed delete, and months of my life disappeared with one careless gesture. I felt heat crawl up my spine. Humiliation came first, panic second, but something else pushed in behind them, something steadier, quieter, almost calm. "Did you hear me?" Marla asked. "If you don't like it, leave." I stood straighter than I had in months. "I agree." Her mouth opened, but I didn't wait for whatever came next. The decision was out of my body before I could argue with it, and suddenly the room felt different, like the fear that used to live in my ribs had slipped out without asking permission. I walked out as the shock spread behind me, unaware that the worst moment of my career had already begun, unraveling everything that came before. I did not walk into that meeting as a blank slate. I carried an entire year on my back, and most of it no one ever bothered to ask about. A few months before everything collapsed, my teammate Jordan had stopped by my desk with a sheepish look. "Hazel, the client numbers for the Blissport route are a mess. Could you take a look?" It was the third time that week. "You were assigned that route," I reminded him. "I know, but you're faster," he said. "Please," I said yes, because saying no always felt dangerous. My father's medication had jumped to nearly $2,000 a month after his insurance change. My rent in Portland had risen by nearly $500. I could not risk losing the only salary keeping us both afloat. Every overtime request, every late-night call, every abandoned spreadsheet someone dumped on my desk, none of it felt optional. One night, around 2 a.m, my co-worker Priya saw my status light still on. "Hazel, you're going to burn out," she said softly. "I can't." I told her, "If I fall behind, I lose everything." She hesitated. "Have you tried using artificial intelligence? Even just for structure, I check every line myself." I said, "But it helps me get through the mountain." That was the truth. The tools never replaced my work. They only kept me breathing long enough to finish it. When Marla added a new forecasting project on top of 3 existing ones, she said, "You're the only one I trust with tight deadlines." I knew it was not trust. It was convenience. Still, I smiled and said, "I'll handle it." So, when I created that final report, months of data, long nights, careful verification, I let myself believe it might finally prove something, that I was more than the person people turned to only when they were drowning. I did not realize then that the same work keeping my life together could be twisted into the weapon that shattered it. The first time Marla mentioned the West Line distribution collapse, she said it casually, like it was a weather report. "If this program keeps bleeding money, we will be cutting jobs by spring," she told the team. No one met her eyes. Everyone understood what that meant. Later that afternoon, she pulled me aside. Hazel, I need you to take the lead on the analysis. You have a better grasp of the patterns than the others. I knew what she really meant. You work the longest hours and complain the least. Still, I nodded. I'll do it. By the end of the first week, the whispers had started. Jordan cornered me near the kitchenette. Are the numbers really that bad? They are worse, I said. He ran a hand through his hair. Do you think they will lay people off? I think they will if I do not get this right. I spent night after night hunched over shifting freight tables. At 2 a.m, Priya messaged me again. Hazel, you're online every night. I need to finish the variance model. Use the tool, just for structure. I will still check every line. I said, I know, she replied. That's why I worry. When the artificial intelligence program flagged a pattern in missed deliveries, I did not trust it. I recalculated manually, whispering the numbers out loud like they were a prayer. The losses were real, nearly $200,000 bleeding into the ground because no one had connected the data before. The next morning, I showed Marla a partial draft. She glanced at it for less than a second. Just finish the full report. You do not want to go over the findings. No, I want a polished document, not half-thought notes. I walked away, clutching the pages like they were a part of me. For the first time in months, I believed the final report might change something not just for the company, but for how she saw me. I started imagining the moment I would hand it in, hoping it would finally prove my worth. Marla's email said the meeting was a routine data review. I believed her. I should have known better. When I stepped into the conference room, she was already sitting at the head of the table. Jordan and 2 other analysts were there too, eyes lowered as if they had been warned not to look up. Hazel, Marla began, we need to discuss concerns about the integrity of your West Line report. Concerns I asked. You have not even reviewed the full analysis. She smiled in a way that made my stomach tighten. Compliance updated the artificial intelligence policy last week. You were notified. I read it. I said, the report uses artificial intelligence for structuring the model, but every figure is manually confirmed. You can check my drafts. That is not what this says. She tapped the screen where one flagged line blinked. You admitted to using artificial intelligence, which violates the new guidelines. That means your numbers cannot be trusted. I felt heat rise in my face. The guidelines prohibit unverified output. I verified everything. That is your interpretation, she replied. Not mine. Jordan finally whispered. Marla. Hazel checks everything. You know she does. She turned sharply toward him. Are you suggesting my judgment is flawed? He swallowed hard. No. Then stay quiet, she snapped. The room fell back into that dangerous silence. I looked at him, hoping he would hold his ground. He dropped his gaze instead, shoulders curling in. So, Marla continued, we have a report compromised by prohibited tools. That looks intentional. Intentional, I repeated. I used the same workflow I have used on every project this year, which may explain our ongoing issues, she said, her voice smooth and cutting. Someone must be held responsible. Responsible? The word struck harder than the accusation itself. She was not looking for truth. She was looking for a scapegoat, and she had already decided it would be me. I did not falsify anything, I said quietly. Marla folded her hands. Then you should have nothing to worry about. But I did. Everyone did. And no one would say a word. The room was still buzzing from the accusation when Marla decided she had not humiliated me enough. She leaned back in her chair. Hazel, if you insist on defending invalid work, maybe this is not the place for you. I stared at her. Invalid, I verified every number. Using artificial intelligence, she reminded me. Which makes your report unusable. If you do not like our standards, Hazel, then go work for another company. Her tone made it clear she did not expect me to answer. She wanted me to shrink, apologize, take the blame, but something inside me hardened. I agree, I said. Marla blinked. Excuse me. I agree that this is not the place for me. A loud breath escaped someone across the table. Another person muttered my name under their breath. No one moved. Marla tried to recover her footing. Hazel, you are being emotional. Sit down and we can discuss. I am done discussing. My hands were steady even though my chest felt like it was cracking open. I will send my resignation today. You are making a mistake, she snapped. You have no idea what the job market looks like. I do, I said. I have been living in fear of it for an entire year. Jordan stood halfway, as if he might say something, but when Marla turned toward him, he sat back down. Hazel, just think it over, he whispered. I already have, I said, gathering my notes. I walked out before Marla could regain control of the room. Each step down the hallway felt unreal, like I was watching someone else move. At my desk, I packed my things quietly. No one approached. No one even pretended. Outside, the Portland air was cold enough to sting my skin. My fear followed me my father's medical bills, my rent, the uncertainty of tomorrow, but something else walked with me too, something unfamiliar and steady. Relief. I told myself that leaving would make things better, that once I walked out of Marla's shadow, the world would open and I would finally breathe. But the world did not open. It slammed doors. The first recruiter from a firm in Seattle barely said hello before cutting me off. Your resume mentions artificial intelligence optimization. We do not hire candidates who rely on that. I do not rely on it. I said, I verify every thank you for your time. He interrupted, and the call ended. A week later, during an interview with a company in Austin, the manager asked, Why did you leave your previous role? My throat tightened. There was a disagreement about workflow. What kind of disagreement? I used a tool they disapproved of. He frowned. So you broke policy. I did not break anything. That is not the impression I am getting. The interview ended with a polite smile that was not polite at all. By the end of the month, my savings had fallen to barely enough to cover one more round of rent and my father's next prescription. When I told him, he tried to reassure me. Hazel, you will find something. You always do. I am trying. I whispered. I really am. One night, desperate to prove I still had value, I opened an old data set and tried creating a full report with no artificial intelligence help at all. The numbers blurred. I miscalculated basic sums I had done 1,000 times. When I found a mistake in the variance line, one I would never have missed before I slammed my hand on the desk. What is wrong with me? I muttered. The empty room did not answer. I sat there, breathing hard, realizing the truth I had been avoiding. The problem was not the tool. It never had been. The problem was the fear that had been growing inside me long before Marla hit delete. The message arrived just after midnight, when I was staring at my bank app and trying not to panic. The subject line read, Inquiry about your Westline analysis. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. The sender was Daniel Harrow, director of strategy at a consulting firm in downtown Portland. His email was short. I reviewed portions of your work months ago. I would like to talk. Your approach stood out. I reread the words again and again before calling my father. Dad. Someone reached out about my report. That one Marla deleted. Yes. He chuckled softly. Then, clearly, it was worth something. The next morning, Daniel suggested a video call. When his face appeared on the screen, he looked thoughtful, not rushed or irritated. Hazel, thank you for meeting, he said. I saw early drafts of your Westline work before it disappeared. Disappeared, I repeated. That is one way to describe it. He smiled gently. Let me be direct. Your integration of artificial intelligence with manual verification was impressive. Most analysts lean too heavily on one or the other. I was told it was invalid. I said, that using artificial intelligence made it untrustworthy by someone who did not understand either tool or process. The breath caught in my throat. You are not concerned about the policy issues. No, he said. I am concerned about whether you are being honest. What happened at your last job? I told him everything: Marla's accusation, the ambush meeting, the deletion, the silence in the room. I expected him to shut down like the others. Instead, Daniel leaned closer. Hazel, what you described is not a policy problem. It is leadership failure. Your workflow is the future. That is why I reached out. I blinked, unsure he meant it. We have a project starting soon. He continued, short-term at first. If it goes well, we will discuss something permanent. For the first time in weeks, the tightness in my chest loosened. Someone had not only seen my work, they valued it. Daniel gave me my first project the same week I signed the contract. We want your style, he said, not the version you were forced into. I poured myself into the analysis, sending him updates every few days. He responded with encouragement instead of criticism. This is sharp, he'd say. Keep going. Your balance of artificial intelligence and manual logic is exactly why I hired you. For the first time in months, my work felt like mine. 2 weeks later, Daniel walked into my workspace holding his phone. Hazel, did you know your name is being passed around the logistics circuit? I frowned. Passed around how people are asking who did the new variance model. It is getting attention. I had not contacted anyone. I barely told anyone I had a new job, but word moved through networks faster than I ever could. That same afternoon, I received a call from a number I recognized the internal audit firm my old company used. A man introduced himself, Ms. Mercer. We are reviewing several reports from your former department. We have a few questions. My pulse kicked, but his tone was calm. Did you verify the Westline figures manually? Yes. Were any of your signatures altered? Yes. The version shown to me in the meeting was not the draft I submitted. There was a pause, followed by a quiet, "Thank you. That aligns with other findings." He hung up without asking anything else. Later, Daniel asked if I was all right. They called about my old report. I said, and I told them the truth. I did not push for punishment. I did not ask what they would do. I just let the facts exist. And somehow, that was enough to make them move. The call came while I was reviewing a set of delivery time projections for Daniel's new client. The number on my screen made my stomach clench. It was the main office line from my old company. A man cleared his throat when I answered. Ms. Mercer, this is Leonard Shaw, Interim Operations Lead. I hope you're well. We need your assistance. My assistance, I repeated. There have been several compliance breaches, he said. Our clients are questioning the integrity of multiple reports. We understand you led the original Westline analysis. I did, I said. We would like you to consider returning in a consulting capacity. Short term, strictly internal. Your insight could help stabilize the situation. His tone hovered between desperation and formality. I could hear people murmuring behind him, panic barely contained. I paused. Is Marla involved in this request? Another throat clear. Ms. Keating is no longer overseeing any data reviews. That told me everything. I agreed to meet, not because I wanted to help them, but because I needed the moment to be real. When I arrived the next afternoon, the conference room looked smaller than I remembered. Leonard stood to greet me. 2 compliance officers sat at the far end of the table. And then I saw her. Marla sat in the corner seat, shoulders drawn inward, hands locked together. She did not speak. She did not direct anything. She simply stared at the table as if the wood grain might swallow her. Leonard gestured to a chair. Hazel, thank you for coming. We would appreciate your guidance on the Westline reconstruction. I sat down slowly. You need help rebuilding what you deleted. Marla flinched, but she still did not speak. Leonard exhaled. Yes, we do. I folded my hands. Then let us discuss what the project requires and what I am willing to offer. Leonard tried to ease into the conversation, but urgency kept seeping through. Hazel, we would like you to outline what you believe the reconstruction requires. I opened the folder I had brought. You need an independent audit, I said. Not my involvement, not my analysis. A neutral third party. If you want transparency restored, that is the only way. One of the compliance officers asked, You are declining to participate. I am declining to return. I said calmly, I left for a reason. Marla's fingers tightened around each other, knuckles whitening. She still did not speak. Leonard leaned forward. We hoped you might reconsider. Your insight would be valuable. My insight is already in the documents you deleted, I replied. But the problem here is not a missing report. It is a pattern of mismanagement. That was the first time Marla looked at me. Her voice was small. You do not understand the pressure I was under. I do, I said. I lived under it for a year. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. Whatever explanation she had been preparing collapsed before it reached the air. I slid the paper across the table. This is the contact information for a firm I trust. They will be fair. They will be thorough. That is what you need now. Leonard accepted the sheet with both hands. Thank you. Hazel. I stood. I wish you well. All of you. No one stopped me as I walked out. No one asked for more. The silence felt different this time. Not avoidance, but recognition. A week later, Daniel told me the board had removed Marla from all strategic roles. Their decision, not mine, he said. The audit findings were clear. I nodded and signed the long-term contract he offered ethical artificial intelligence consultant, responsible for shaping how companies use the tools that had once been used against me. Walking home through downtown Portland that evening, I felt lighter than I ever had. She erased my report to keep control. Life erased her excuses to prove she never had it, and I kept moving forward, finally free to begin again.